Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan anime review. This one's going to be for Season 3, Episode 21, which is called Attack Titan. And yeah, another really strong episode of Attack on Titan. Perhaps not as mind-blowing as the previous episode, just because the flashback section of this episode was ultimately only one conversation, and the rest we already knew with regards to where Grisha goes immediately after this. But they managed to throw in just the little bit of flashback that we got, some kind of mind-blowing things which we'll get into, especially that final scene. But ultimately, I would say that the main reveal in this episode is the curse of Ymir's curse, which is that any Titan shifter can only live for 13 years. So the rule is that a Titan shifter dies 13 years after they inherit their power. And if it doesn't get passed on by being eaten, it is just kind of reborn again, I suppose. So that was very interesting, because that suddenly changes the dynamic of like our main characters. Like, initially, before we knew this, it was like, great, Armin survived, he's back, and Eren has all this kind of hope because of how much he was able to get done over the course of that. There's hope for the future, and Mikasa has her two friends right there. Now, all of a sudden, everything changes. Eren realizes he only has like 8 years to live. Armin has 13 years, but I suppose because of the nature of what happened, it's 13 years he wouldn't have otherwise had. Whereas with Eren, it's kind of like everything, all the sort of bad stuff that has happened to him now, there's this, I'm only going to live 8 more years. He's going to die before he turns 23. So it's this real, frustrating thing for him. And I think it helps to explain his sort of attitude for most of the episode, that the other characters kind of jokingly put off as like, oh, he's at that age, he's 15, he just does this sort of stuff. Levi says it, then Hanji says it, but Hanji, I think, kind of just covers for Eren by saying that, and that, like, okay, you don't want to say this in public, but I'll get it out of you later. But yeah, we learn a lot of this through basically the idea that Eren, while in the cell, is basically almost like experiencing the memories of the flashback that we're actually seeing. So you get that moment where he just randomly says, Shingeki no Kyojin, Attack Titan, and that's when Hanji walks in and it's just like, what are you doing? You just did the pose and said Attack Titan. Is that the name of your Titan? And she's all excited because she's like the one who wants to know all the details about this sort of stuff. But he kind of keeps parts of it hidden, in that I think it becomes fairly clear that like I don't think he tells anyone except Mikasa and Armin about the whole 13-year thing. Maybe he will, it'll be revealed in the next episode that he did, but he definitely keeps the bit later on hidden where he figures out that the one time he was able to access the power of the founding or coordinate Titan was because he happened to punch the Titan form of Dina Fritz, and because of that he was connected to a royal family member, and that's why he was able to use the power. He specifically sort of hides that from people because he assumes that they might then try and do something with Historia to force the use of that power in some way. So, and I suppose almost to kind of protect himself from the kind of whole Rod Rice thing from before, in that if, I suppose, the higher-ups get as invested as maybe we think they might get, they might be thinking, like, what's the point in having this power if it's with someone who can't use it? Historia's right here, we'll have her become a Titan, eat Eren, and that whole thing will come up again. But then they do address the whole what we found out about, I think, the first half of this season, and that being the sort of the will of the king who basically put everyone in the walls on Paradise Island, and the fact that anyone who from there who inherits it, a royal family member with the power of the founding Titan, can never truly use it to actually accomplish anything, because they just always have the will of the king. They can never choose to fight because they will just decide to stay behind the walls for safety. And I like that they mentioned the whole idea of why this has happened, and in a way why this is a set in stone rule, is because the king at the time didn't want the the crimes of Eldia to happen again, them to commit the same crimes that they did in the past. And obviously we don't really know what that is necessarily. Maybe it's suggesting that at some point, like, what did Ymir Fritz ultimately do in the 13 years she was alive? Because that's an interesting thing as well. Of, like, the reason it's the curse of Ymir is because Ymir was the one who died 13 years after inheriting her powers, and then it split up into the 9 powers, which are all connected, and we got the explanation of, like, how connected they are. It is literally a path that, like, connects all of the Titan shifters, like, through kind of space and time almost, all the way back to the founding Titan and Ymir Fritz back in the past. There is a lot discussed in this episode that I think is very, very interesting. I suppose, yeah, like you have the whole royal blood thing with Eren and the founding Titan. You have I suppose the naming of Eren's Titan as the Attack Titan is interesting in that Eren Kruger explains that, like, it is a Titan that throughout history has always, the user of it has always, like, strived for freedom and hope and stuff like that. But again, it's probably the most unclear Titan as to what exactly the power that it has is, because it hasn't really demonstrated any unique ability. It is a very solid, usable Titan, like, reasonable size, reasonable agility. It to me feels like it's the most, like, human in Titan form Titan, and maybe maybe there is a special power to it, which I'll discuss with the final scene here in a minute. But other than that, it just seems like, more kind of personality wise, the user of the Attack Titan always tends to have a certain approach with everything. And in a way, they're almost setting up the idea that, like, the two Titan powers that Eren has at this point in time are the most unique ones with regards to you have the founding Titan power, which has caused basically everything to be hidden behind the walls, and you have the Attack Titan power, which is the one that people are using to actually try and stop that from happening, to actually make the founding Titan do something. They're actually all in the same person now, but he is someone who can't use one of those Titan powers for the most part. So it's a very unique situation in that Eren seems like the perfect user of it, but then if they give those powers to someone else from the royal family, they wouldn't have the ability to use it. Now, I suppose the question would be that, like, almost if you treat the founding Titan power as being the one that is sort of limited by this will, and then the Attack Titan power is almost being the free will power, what if Hisoria ate Eren, she'd actually gain the power of both the Attack Titan and the founding Titan power? Would she then be able to, of her free will, make her own decisions? Because they'd sort of cancel each other out. The will of the king will be cancelled out by, like, the Attack Titan's powers, like, a quest for freedom or whatever. I don't really know. That's just some speculation. But the final scene, which is basically, Kruger just about to give the injection to Grisha, and just explaining that the mission that you have to do, because I'm going to die very soon, is that you have to go into the walls. I suggest you start a family as the best way to, like, go undercover and make everything happen. And then he basically just says, you doing this is going to stop history, like, repeating itself. Like, if you don't do this, history will just repeat itself. You have to save Armin and Mikasa. And it's like, wait, what? Like Grisha's like, who are they? And you as the audience are like, this is in the past. Like, Eren isn't even born yet. Armin isn't even born yet. Mikasa's not born yet. How is this even possible? What's happening here? Because how is this even happening? Now, the obvious thing is that he knows this through the connection of being one of the 9 Titan shifters, and he basically says, whose memories are these? And the I suppose if you think of it just as like time being normal, then like it makes no sense. But if you do think about it in terms of like if the connection of the founding titan is as big as we think it is, then it is more than just this like 9 abilities connected back to like the original source. And especially with the idea that if a Titan Shifter dies, the power is sort of reborn in a child. That suggests that there's more to the power than just the physical act of eating and stuff like that. That it is actually just reborn within a subject of Ymir. That suggests a level of like almost like magic to it, which would give like some sort of a again, we don't know the specifics behind how Ymir got the power. In that, like, I think did they say in this episode it's like the source of organic life or something like that, which is where she got the power from, but that's just like the rumor. So it could suggest that he actually has powers from someone he is going to pass the attack Titan power onto. Of like, he says it so confidently initially, and then it's like, wait, what did they just say? Almost like he knows that Grisha in the future will know Armin and Mikasa, that his son Eren will be best friends with them, and that's why they're people you'll need to protect. It's that, or potentially going off the special power of the attack titan, if relating to freedom and hope, potentially, is that maybe it's the only one that is able to sort of, in a way, sense the future like that, have the connection that goes forward as well as backwards. And so that is why it is the one that is sort of maybe free to actually like change the fate of what is happening. Because it makes you then think about what was said earlier on with the whole King's Will thing, and the crimes of Eldia can't repeat themselves. Almost as if they're not talking about necessarily that like Ymir did something when like Eldia was in the ascendancy, but that like in a previous time loop or something like that, Eldia did do some really, really bad stuff, and so he tried to create this situation to stop it, but it's just part of the loop, and maybe the attack titan is the only one that can actually stop it. It's hard to speculate exactly on what it is, but it's such a thought-provoking moment of just, like the writer didn't even need to do that. Just in this scene, it's finally connecting all the dots. We have Grisha's full backstory in place now. Then you suddenly add in just that one line of him saying, you've got to protect these two people that aren't even born yet. How do I know about them? And everything suddenly changes again. And I think that's been the strength of Attack on Titan this season. Its ability to reveal to you the mysteries that have been in play for so long, but also add new ones in, add extra layers onto them, and add so much more depth. So, I thought, again, this episode was really, really good, and I haven't even talked yet about the whole Historia and Ymir bit of like, oh yeah, with her, like, okay, so she says she's going to die soon, but it's not because of the Ymir's curse, because she's only had the power like 5 years because of when she got it. But I suppose the idea is that, I suppose, they've gone back to Marley, so they might have someone else become the special titan that she is like the Jaw Titan or something like that. And we'll see what that happens. I suppose that's the idea of like, this is her final letter. She, knowing that her power is going to be shifted onto someone else, she sends this letter back, and it helps to just, I suppose, bring full circle on her story of just this letter saying she loved Historia, wished she could have married her, and through the letter, I suppose, Historia actually getting to experience those memories. So she actually sees the full memory of Ymir that we got previously. So that was, I think, really, really interesting in that it suggests, okay, Historia is absolutely, a descendant of the king, but queen of royal blood, I suppose, effectively. And this confirms it, because like they did similar things with Eren when they were in the cave, of like connecting memories like this, but especially given that, like, yeah, one of the king's powers was the sort of manipulation of memories, which again, with if you sort of bring time travel into place, and the idea of Kruger directly saying that, oh no, this is important because someone in the future could be watching this. He's directly kind of saying that the memories that we create in the present will be seen by other people going forward. This isn't just between the two of us. Other people will see it, and especially when you then introduce a power that directly manipulates memories and potentially weird time stuff of this happening before something else and so on. It gets really, really crazy, but the core now, like they discuss in the meeting, is that, okay, they've informed the higher-ups, like the entire military, everyone in power, now knows the story of this. They now know that the people on this island are descendants of Ymir. They all have the ability to turn into a titan, suggesting, of course, that everyone else in the world doesn't. And because of that, that's why they're more or less, isolated out here on this island and treated as, outcasts, and other countries want to kill them, is because of the potential of them to become so dangerous with the Titan powers. The founding Titan is going to be key to everything going forward, and their enemies are actually the humans outside the walls. Their enemies are not the Titans, their enemies are another civilization of humanity. So, I like that now the military of the walls basically knows now who their enemy is. The question now is obviously, what do they specifically do? They only have a few Titans. Can they immediately go to war with Marley now, or what? Because again, they don't know the scope of what they're going up against. They are just one island versus, who knows how big Marley is at this point in time. It's getting pretty tense. Like the last episode of the season, next week's episode, is called "To the Other Side of the Wall." So I assume this is going to be just the moment of them seeing it with their own eyes, that there is the ocean beyond the walls. And I like that as well, that like Grisha at the start of the episode is like, oh, I should probably actually define the term ocean. You've probably never heard it before. Yeah, the world is 70% ocean, as in like you live in an island that's like 1% of the surface of the earth. There's water on 70%, and land is only the other bit left over. So you are tiny in the grand scheme of things. You have no idea about the greater world. So there's that. They also didn't really address stuff like the fact that there are other races as well. There's not just Marleyans and Eldians, but like Mikasa as well. There's, she's kind of obviously like part Ackerman, part Asian. So how do those two affect things? I assume they're basically suggesting that they are two other countries at some point in the world, that there is like Asia of this world, and then some other country where like the Ackermans are from potentially, or what. That's going to be interesting to see when they get to that, if they get to it. But I think that's pretty much everything I want to talk about here. I like the situation kind of Eren is in now, in that everything seemed to be going right. He accomplished everything he needed to, but this is just another setback for him, of like, he's only got so long to live now, and any freedom that he accomplishes, he won't really be able to experience. So it suggests the idea of like, what will he do to potentially find some sort of a solution to this? And you have questions like, wait, what happens if all of the 9 powers are restored within one person? Does that do something again? In that, like, I assume then he would be able to use all of the powers that he needs to do, but like, is that even possible? And even the suggestion of that, given who has the powers, that would involve Eren having to eat Armin, and so on. So that suddenly becomes a big problem. So there's all these questions that come up because of all these recent reveals we've just got. Like, the entire nature of this series has just kind of changed with the reveals of like this half of a season, basically. So they're my thoughts on this episode, and we'll be reviewing the finale to season 3 next week. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.